Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Friday. Welcome to TGIK 136 Open Service Mesh. Glad to have you all with us today. Looks like we got Maddie joining us. As always, Maddie, great to see you. Rory as well. Hey, Rory. We got Hussein. We've got Haim from Israel. What's up? Steve, how's it going, man? Eric, good to see you. Good to see you, Eric. Hope everything's doing well at the new gig. Pablo, hey, Pablo. Yep, and cheers to that, Steve. Martin, hey, Martin, thanks for joining us as always. We got Fully Geared Bear in the chat. Welcome. Pedro, great to see you. We got Bojanche. Hello. Glad to have you. Yusuf from Morocco. How's it going? Ilko from Holland. Gotti, hey, ahoy. We got Pablo. We got Waleed. Great to see you, Waleed. Sampath, Pablo. Looks like we've got Aristides from Miami. I may have butchered that. I'm so sorry. Tim, Peter. Hey, Peter. I haven't seen your name show up in a little while. Great to see you, Peter. Thanks for joining today. We've got Mona. Thank you for joining, Mona. This is actually her suggestion through the TGIK repo. So we're trying to get good at making sure we knock out some more of those episode ideas. So if you've got something you want to cover, be sure to call it out. This should be a really, really good one. Traco, hello. Happy Friday to you too. And you're enjoying a beverage, Eric. Yeah, same here. Cheers to that. Caleb from Columbia, South Carolina. Awesome. All right. And Ibram, hello. Nice to see you. All right, everyone. Welcome to, not that screen. Welcome to this screen. There we go. Episode 136, Open Service Mesh. Super psyched to check this one out with you. I've been thinking about covering Open Service Mesh for a while. Apparently Joe has been as well. So this will be a good one to dive into, learn a little bit about SMI, OSM, and all these other different acronyms in the Kubernetes and service mesh space. If this is your first time joining us for TGIK, I see a lot of familiar names, but what we typically do with TGIK is Fridays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, we dive into some open source technology or Kubernetes concept, container concept, kind of varies per episode, and we kind of dig in and learn about stuff. And like I had mentioned, a lot of times we're just picking a piece of tech and diving into it. And in this case, OSM is that piece of tech. I've never played with it before. And I'm really looking forward to diving in today. All right. Cool. All right. And Yogi, great to see you. I'm on the Lounge TV. Nice, Steve. I'm honored to be on the Lounge TV for sure. The big screen, right? Hey, Savvy, thanks for joining us as well. We got George coming in. Hey, all right, let's get into this thing. So what do we got in the news this week? We're on Alpha 2 of 1.20. So if you're playing around with 1.20 before a beta release comes out, be sure to check that out. Haven't dug into 1.20. Has anyone in chat played around with 1.20 yet? Haven't gotten the chance to play around or even really check out the enhancements that are in it yet. SIG Release is discussing if Kubernetes should move to 3 releases per year as a permanent cadence. So this would be a pretty big deal. And if you've got some input on this, it could be really, really good to get your opinions and your thoughts here. This would move us away from, what do we do now, 4 a year, right? So this would give us a little bit of a different structure in how we think about that, how we try to focus a bit more time on stability efforts and just, downtime with the contributors and all that good stuff. So this could be a really interesting one for y'all to read through. Give it a heart if you like it. And if you got some objections, be sure to put them in here and give some insights. Could be a pretty big change for us all. If Kubernetes moved to a 3 release cadence or 3 a year release cadence. So interesting. So I'm seeing some 3s in chat. So be sure to give it a thumb up if you haven't already jumped into the issue. Even if it's just a little heart or a little thumbs up, it says a lot. Make sure your opinion is heard. And speaking of contributing to Kubernetes, Kate's contributors Twitter account. You should follow this thing. And I was just going to say, I'm sure I'm hoping that I'm following it, because if I'm not, I'd be quite the hypocrite telling you all to follow it. But there's so much cool stuff going on with helping making the contribution experience and community better and better. Thanks to folks like George and the larger community at hand with Kubernetes. If you haven't seen the Kate's Dev website for contributors, it's just getting that much easier, hopefully welcoming and better to be a Kubernetes contributor. So if this, you've been thinking this year, wow, I really want to get involved with open source or with Kubernetes, the resources are there. Let's get you hooked up. Follow the Twitter channel. Watch out for news and different ways to get onboarded and learn how to contribute. We'd love to have you in the project. I admit I got to get my contributions up a little bit more upstream. I tend to get a little bit too downstream, and I need to spend some more time up a bit. All right, cool. Ramazan, welcome. All right. Okay. And Maddie, you said whatever happened to the proposal to create a long-term Kubernetes release? I think you're talking about LTS, right? George might have a link into some of that information, but this could theoretically impact, I believe, LTS to some extent, making the, I don't want to speak for sure, but the supportability of releases would probably be like a year or something like that. So yeah, that's true, Steve. There's more ways to contribute than just code, right? I mean, those of you throwing out blog posts and all that good stuff, I mean, you're doing your part. It's all about, it's not all about code. It's advocacy, it's docs, it's guidance, it's all that good stuff. It's sitting next to one of your coworkers as they're learning Kubernetes and helping them kind of learn how cool this ecosystem is and be successful with it, right? So there's a lot of ways you can contribute to this thing. All right, cool. All right, Kubernetes cloud ecosystem. We've got yet another DNS latency story. It's interesting. I saw a Twitter thread not too long ago that said something of the sentiment of, when you scale Kubernetes out, what is the first thing that kind of tears at the seams? And I think DNS is probably it. I mean, some folks say it's IP tables. So, it just kind of depends really, how you're set up. There's a million factors. I mean, heck, it could be something with your applications or the platform services you run on Kube that tear at the seams, frankly. But this is a DNS story. I have been down this path with a lot of larger shops in the past. I haven't dug deep into it, but just reading this little piece here, I can say for sure that I've been in the case where DNS was the first thing that got hit a little too hard. Pods came up and did weird things and started DDoSing the DNS to some extent. And one of the things that actually Duffy and I, back in our Core OS days when we were working with a customer, we had to solve this problem. I think it was like Cube 1.4.1.5 maybe. And basically, this was like one of the first larger use cases of Kube, and this cluster was just getting destroyed from pods doing bad things with DNS and all this stuff. So what we ended up doing back in the Kube DNS days is we ran a local DNS mask instance on every node to basically provide a node local cache. So think about like a daemon set, and we did some interesting tricks to make sure that DNS traffic got redirected to the node local cache before that went out to like an upstream DNS. So that was a super interesting hack. And it worked. It actually solved the scaling issue, which was pretty cool. Shout out Duffy for helping us out with that back in the day, years and years ago. And and now node local DNS is a first-class feature of Kube. I haven't had to turn it on yet or really play with it, but pretty cool. And, based on this graph that looks like it's got a lot going on and dropping to a pretty strong flat line there, it looks like they might have been pretty successful with introducing node local cache. So pretty cool stuff. And Marco, you said it's always DNS. I feel like as much as I read that sentiment, I always forget, but it still always ends up being DNS. And then I always learn the lesson over and over again. Maybe I need to get a neck tattoo or something that says it's always DNS. That way I never forget. All right. Cool. And George gave some more details on LTS. Thanks so much, George. So if you are interested in understanding kind of LTS and perhaps what the different cadence can have an impact on for LTS, be sure to check that out. It should be pretty interesting. And Steve says, or expired certs. Yeah, I mean, back in the day too, it was, it was hard to rotate certs, like, and everyone forgot about them. Like, I think every initial setup and tutorial had you make like a year-long cert, and it was hilarious. I obviously can't say who these groups are, but I remember back in the CoreOS days again, when we were first getting, like, these are like people adopting Cube in 1.4, so it's still pretty early on, right? And we're deploying all these things. We're using, in that case, it was a product called Tectonic that underpins a good chunk of OpenShift nowadays, and I'll tell you, like, when the 1 year, like, I don't know how many of you have worked in like software sales and renewal stuff, but like you kind of know when accounts are coming up for renewal in that world. And it was always funny, like when the 1 year hit, it was not uncommon for there to be like a fire happening because the freaking certs expired. It always would happen. It was wild because people just wouldn't think about it. It's like, oh, it's a year away from now. Why would I ever worry about that, right? So it's pretty interesting stuff. Maddie says SSL cert check and Prometheus black bog exporter. Yeah, fair, Maddie. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And you say, Artis, you've seen Kate certs that expire in 30 years. Well, the good news, it won't expire. Hopefully that private key does not leak anywhere in 30 days or 30 years, I should say. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, there could be some vulnerabilities inside of there for a good 30 years. But hey, you know, we do what we can. All right, so that was a cool little DNS story. Check it out. You know, if you're in a group that's like starting to see your cluster scale over time, this is, again, one of those common pain points. Check it out, learn a little bit about the story, and thanks so much, Andreas, who posted this. I love when folks share their war stories. It's so helpful, so we can all learn. All right, good stuff. So this article was interesting. I read through it super quick. I'm actually going to dive a bit into it more because I think Daniel's got a post about how to build internal Kubernetes platforms, but this is a post about why people build internal Kubernetes platforms. And it gives a couple anecdotes here about why people are building internal platforms on top of Kube. He gives some examples. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Airbnb or who the shops were, but he went through 3 examples and then breaks down some of the key reasons why you know, he has seen people or believes people build application platforms. Some of the anecdotes are pretty interesting that I hadn't really thought about. Spotify was one of them, actually. You can see right here. Links some good KubeCon talks a bit about it. I mean, I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with the idea of running an internal Kubernetes platform. And, you know, some of us are running these on-prem in our own hardware. Some of us are running them in cloud environments. Regardless, in my mind, it can still be an internal Kubernetes platform, you know, regardless of what your provider underlying is. And yeah, I think what's really interesting as I've dove in and seen kind of these talks happen, and one thing I really find interesting at KubeCon, especially hearing from shops like Spotify and others using Kube, like I think it was Airbnb that was talking about it, like the idea of how much abstraction you add to Kubernetes, right? So what I'm getting at here is like there's so many different philosophies. There's the idea on one end of the spectrum of let's self-service clusters to development teams and let's just like hand them their own Kubernetes cluster and have them go at it. And that can work. You know, there's all these approaches have trade-offs. And there's the other side of the equation where Kubernetes is like a deep implementation detail, right? Where the developers have all these kind of platform services built on top of it that whether they're running on Kube or not is actually entirely abstracted in some shops. I remember a talk at KubeCon from Uber, I think it was Uber, where they were talking about their abstraction. I think they call it something like Peloton on top of Mesosphere and Kube. And if I understood the talk correctly, the abstraction basically enabled developers to work just with that Peloton abstraction, right? And basically not worry so much about the deltas between Mesosphere and Kube and the intricacies there. Now, there's a bunch of trade-offs there. Like now they have to maintain this big abstraction. You know, the developers also won't be coming in with like knowledge about Peloton, right? Because that's probably some internal tooling that Uber uses, I would assume. You know, so on and so forth. But, you know, they've abstracted 2 systems. They've probably reduced a lot of complexity. Hopefully they've created a great developer experience, which I think is really one of the big cruxes of this article, towards the end, somewhere in here, it says something about having a great developer experience. Yeah, here it is. This is the crux, right? And this is where I've seen a lot of people fail, frankly, with their internal Kubernetes initiative. I'd love to say all the folks I've worked with have been successful, but a lot of times when they don't really think about how the developers want to interact with it, what abstractions are appropriate with them, how to not over abstract, but how to not under abstract, it can really, kill adoption. It can really cause problems. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Cool. All right. Rory said, of course, longer cert expires aren't too bad as long as you can revoke compromised ones. That's a good point, Rory. As long as you've got a mechanism to revoke that, you could be safe. Just, as long as you can detect when something goes wrong, right? So as long as you know they got compromised, then I guess you're pretty well off, right? Yeah, and as Steve put it, a platform is a customer. Do you mean to the developer, Steve? Or maybe I'm just reading it incorrectly, but that's what I tell folks all the time is like, coming from like VMware, even when we were Heptio, right? Like we were helping people build platforms and our customers were like the platform teams. But really the way we could be really successful, and I think this is true for a lot of us in the like infrastructure and platform realm, is like we need to be, from a vendor standpoint, worrying about making our customers successful. And for platform teams, the customers are the developers, right? And we need to ship just remarkable experiences for them and all that good stuff. So yeah, and actually, you know what? I don't think we have it in the news this week, but this is something that is super interesting. What's HashiCorp calling their new abstraction, everyone? What's the name of that thing? Is it the Waypoint one? I feel like they came out with like 13 things. I think it's Waypoint, right? Yeah, Steve's using his British grammar, no problem. Waypoint. Yeah, okay. So if you haven't checked this out, interesting stuff, right? I'm not an expert like most of the things I talk about, but how I understand it is if you break the domain apart of, providing a platform, right? You have the building of the assets and artifacts and so on. You have the deployment of them. And then to some degree, you have the rollout. And yeah, Abram, is just like you said, like it's kind of like, in a way, I guess, a CI/CD and HCL. I think it's kind of a fair way to maybe put it, although I don't know how much HashiCorp would agree, although I think your sentiment is largely right. What's interesting about this is, what if we can abstract, right? What if we can provide this abstraction atop many providers that's consistent, right? And I think a lot of times, folks cite groups like, or products like Heroku, or companies like Heroku, I guess. I don't know how you want to frame it. But, Heroku is a great example of a amazing platform as a service that developers can be extremely successful with extremely quickly. Cloud Foundry is another big example, right? This idea of, I just send my source code, send a message about my source code somewhere, and all of a sudden the image is created, all of a sudden it's deployed, and like literally I get a URL returned to me. That's how end to end that experience can be, right? So, what's going to be interesting about Waypoint is it's kind of taking the idea of having that platform as a service abstraction at a higher level, and it's allowing you to kind of plug into a variety of backends. So your deploy backend could be Kubernetes, but it also could be ECS and other things, and you can provide, again, this set of abstractions to hopefully alleviate some of the requirements of making, a developer a Kubernetes expert, because in some organizations that just won't fly, right? You need to have better abstractions to make them, more successful, quicker, and easier. At a shop, here's an anecdote. At a shop that I worked at not too long ago, we rolled out Kubernetes, and we didn't abstract Kubernetes too much, right? So we kind of got a lot of adoption from the people who were excited about Kube, from the developers who were excited about, pods, and they already had their stuff in containers, and they were, going from a ticketing system to this new like self-service API. That was all great. But then there was another end of the business, longer term after we got that initial rush, that was, a bunch of great Java developers and, Python developers, machine learning people. And while they don't hate Kubernetes, frankly, a lot of them really don't care. And that's sometimes something I have to remind myself. Like, I love Kubernetes a lot. I care a lot about it. But a lot of people, They're actually more interested in shipping their software quicker. How freaking cool Kubernetes is might not mean anything to them. What might mean a lot more to them is the experience that you provide them on top of it. So that was a long-winded way of saying Waypoint looks interesting. We'll have to see kind of how this plays out. I think it's an interesting view on providing abstractions and pluggable ones at that. And it looks like George put a link in there about Mitchell from HashiCorp, who I believe is like the founder and does a lot of amazing stuff there, putting some information about it in Hacker News, it looks like. So do check that out. Don't take my word for it. I read like an hour worth of information about it. I still don't completely understand, but I'm interested. I'm very, very intrigued. Maybe a future TGIK. So it's like Auto. I don't know Auto, Steve and Ibram. What's Auto? Auto Paths? I don't even know what to search for. Tell me the company name. Auto Open Source. Oh boy, synthesizers. Joe would like this. No, I'm guessing that's not what you're talking about. But tell me more about Auto. I'd be interested to check it out. I'm guessing it's not this, although this looks a heck of a lot cooler than whatever we're talking about. Oh, Dead project from HashiCorp. Okay. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. I had no idea. Autoproject.io. All right, what are y'all showing me here? Decommissioning. Oh, hey, interesting. Unified application delivery spectrum. Did anyone use this? I've never seen this thing. Did y'all use it with like Vagrant and the whole stack before? Waleed said it was a brave move. So it was a brave, but maybe not super, super successful move, perhaps. I don't know. It's interesting. I see kind of an overlap here, but I never had anyone mention Auto to me. But yeah, whatever. Interesting. Yeah, Eric says remembers it being announced, but there's crickets. Well, you know what they say. There's nothing like putting a new name on something. I'm just kidding. I'm sure there's a lot more nuance to Waypoint. We should all check it out. It looks super interesting. I'm stoked to dig in and see what's going on. Tumbleweed. Waleed said Mitchell talk. Oh, that would be a really cool thing to check out, Waleed. If you know the link, feel free to throw it in the show notes. I'd be super curious. I'm always psyched about a good failure story. All right. Okay. That was just kind of a diversion, but it's cool. Sevi says chilling with your drink. Me too, Sevi. We're on the same page. Cool. Let's talk about Kubernetes not running 50,000 jobs, and then we'll get into OSM. Okay. HashiCorp. Oh, you all are adding more stuff in here. Don't forget oh, cool. Thank you for throwing that in. We'll talk about that too really quickly. But first, kind of cool. I've never seen this YouTube channel before, but I watched this video. And if I understood correctly, this person makes videos about automation, about everything from Ansible to Cube, infrastructure, the whole world we do in TGIK. And it sounded like he aspired to have 5,000 subscribers in 2002 and got 50,000. So first off, Jeff, congratulations. That's freaking cool. But what's more relevant to us, so you should subscribe to Jeff and see what cool Kubernetes stuff he talks about. I'm going to check his video out or his channel out probably this weekend. But he did a cool thing about 50K Kate's jobs. And I think the summary of the findings are this. He went in with an approach to try to use, I think it was Ansible or something, to basically roll out buckets of jobs over time, right? So basically, in doing so, I think he found that the scheduler kind of barfed and hung up on worrying about 50,000 jobs. And I don't think, I'll have to read more into it, but I don't think he was like slamming the scheduler with 50,000 jobs right away. I think he was kind of batching and going in and adding and waiting for them to succeed and move on to the next batch. So not only is this just a really cool experiment, not only is it really great that of his success on YouTube, but it's cool that it ended up with an upstream issue. It just, again, like we were talking about, this shows like the 90,000 ways that you can help out the Kubernetes ecosystem and make this project and this ecosystem a better place for all of us. So really freaking cool. Rory says Jeff has some really cool books on Ansible, and including a Cube and Ansible specific book. I'll have to check that out. That's super, super interesting. Thanks, Rory. If you have links to his book and want to throw them in the show notes too, feel free to. We do a bunch of stuff here and there with Ansible with customers and things like that. So I would love to read the Kubernetes perspective on it. That'd be really cool. Steve says IBM have done that a few times. Yeah, not too surprising. Hitting too many. I think Steve, you're probably referring to the auto thing, right? The real question is, how come Josh doesn't have a KK repo starred? That's a great question, Peter. Huh. That is a really, really good question. I need to get a KK repo starred. So problem solved, live on the channel. It's no longer an issue. What do people do with stars though? Like, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but like, it's just like a right? Does star like do anything for you with notifications or anything? I feel like I don't star repos for any reason other than like I just forget to, because it seems like it doesn't have functional purpose. But maybe I'm totally wrong there. I should be starring a lot more. Asking to get notification spam is what George says. That's what I'm worried about. That's exactly what I'm worried about. Oh man, I'll take it though. You're not wrong. Stars are marketing. Yogi says use it as a bookmark. That's a good point. I mean, GitHub has restructured quite a bit. You know what I mean? As far as like the social aspects and all this stuff, I need to like figure out what the right GitHub flow is, because I feel like it's still just like drowning my inbox with notifications. And it's probably because I'm just using the thing wrong. Anyways, okay, so that's really cool. Check out the books from Jeff. Check out his YouTube channel and check out the GitHub issue if you're interested. It's really cool. All right. So don't forget, if you use Helm, repo changes incoming. Is this for the V2 ending of support? Did they literally say that? Yeah, okay. Read the whole sentence, Josh. Helm V2 support is ending. You should check out the implications of that if you are still using Helm V2. If you're still using Helm V2, don't use Helm V2 anymore. Let's move on. But if you are, just make sure you check out the implications from the hub. For the repo that things get pulled from. We'd hate for you to wake up in the morning and be like, why is everything Helm related breaking all of a sudden? Why is Tiller doing weird things, right? So do check that out if you're using Helm v2. HashiCorp Waypoint, it got thrown in here. Maybe it was in here the whole time. I can't remember. If so, I'm sorry for jumping the gun, but we've covered that one at nauseum, I think. Cool. Ansible for Kubernetes.com. Look how easy that is. Easy enough. So check it out if you're using Ansible. I recently read not recently, I'm lying. Like a year ago, I read a book on Ansible, and I was thinking the whole time I was reading it, wow, it'd be so cool if there was one focused on Kubernetes and not just host configuration. And sure enough, it was probably sitting in front of me this whole time. All right. Bridget says, also, please use Helm v3 because end of support means no more security patches. Thanks, Bridget. Great point. You know, it's about time we all get on v3, I think. What do you say? So let's do this thing. Make sure you're making an upgrade. Make sure you don't put yourself in a bad spot in the future. And hey, Bridget, thanks for joining us. All right, Steve. Yes, and we've got who else? Oh, we've got Flash joining us as well. If you're looking for new technology, just check the stars. That's what I tell people all the time. When a customer says, should I use this project? I always say, does it have more than 1,000 stars? Because if so, you should definitely use it. I'm totally joking, but yeah, I hear you. All right, Ansible for Kubernetes. We've got the link in the show notes. I think it's about time that we transition into OSM. What do y'all say? All right. First question for everyone who's hanging out with us today. Who here is using a service mesh? Can I get a yes in the chat if you're using a service mesh, and a no in the chat if you're not using a service mesh? I'm so curious. I'm always curious. Like, what's the data on this? Are most people using a mesh nowadays or not? So give me a yes if so and no if not. Waleed says, problem with Ansible managing K8s is the absence of state. I believe Terraform. Yeah, I think it's interesting, Waleed. Like the separation of configuration management, infrastructure management, immutable images, and how that should be set up. It's a whole world of consideration, you know. I mean, heck, sometimes we use Ansible to bake an image to then print out a machine image so that we don't have to use Ansible, so we can use that machine image in the future, right? To kind of follow on more of an immutable style. So it's interesting. All right, so let's see. What do we got here? I'm seeing... Okay, I think it's like 50-50, right? Maybe it's leaning a little bit more towards mesh, though. Maybe it's like 60-40. A lot of you are using mesh. Waleed says one dev was using it. We removed it. Okay, I'd be curious why, or if there's anything specific you hit. Tim says, looking forward to things that implement service mesh interface. Yeah, we'll dive into that. That's a super interesting thing. And Bridget is joining us today, and Bridget is on the OSM project. So thanks again for joining us, Bridget, and maybe you can help us steer clear of landmines if we do hit one. Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of folks. There's more people using a service mesh than I had thought, to be honest with you. I feel like a lot of times folks have aspirations for it when I talk to them, but they really haven't kind of bit that piece of the puzzle off yet. And Mortza, you said we wrote a library that has some features of a service mesh. Yeah, great point. Yeah, a lot of people are using service meshes or those model. They just implement it at a bit of a different level. Sometimes as a platform service. Sometimes people bake it into app libraries. There's a bunch of different approaches here, so we'll try to dig into them. But let's start off by talking a little bit about SMI. All right, so SMI, this is interesting, right? We have, no question, should I say proliferation of service meshes? Is that fair, or is that overstating? And I feel like we have a healthy service mesh ecosystem. Let's say that, okay? So we have Linkerd, we have got Open Service Mesh, we've got Istio, we've got I was hoping they'd have a list here. We have Console Connect to do certain aspects of it, right? We've got a bunch of different things here. Now, I think what's really interesting about mesh is it's clearly scratching an itch that we sort of created for ourselves, I think, right? We went into the world of more, I was about to say service-oriented architecture, but that could make people have weird feels. We went into a lot more distributed microservice-y type architectures. Not to say you have to run microservices on Kube. Monoliths can be very successful too, but you get microservices, you put a lot of complexity into the networking layer. And then when you have all of these disparate services that talk to each other, you start saying things like, how do I control traffic between them? How do I make sure that they're protected? How do I make sure they're communicating in an encrypted manner? How do I make sure that service A and service B only talk to each other if they trust each other based on some like identity backed by cryptographical whatever, right? All these things arise, and then we end up saying, I think I need a service mesh, right? And timing can be a bit of everything. I feel like service mesh, a lot of us, we've kind of gotten there over time. A lot of times we say it might not be, if you're first introducing Kube, the best idea to introduce service mesh right away. You might want to kind of get some expertise and, operational knowledge on Kube. But service mesh is definitely scratching an itch. There's no question. So let's see here. Yeah, Yogi says, I think OSM is timely. I agree with you. I'm pretty psyched to dig into OSM. And I'm especially excited that someone is doing something about SMI, which is what I meant to mention here, that service mesh interface, right? Let's think about interfaces for a moment. So everyone in chat, what big interfaces do we use in Kubernetes every single day? Or maybe don't use as much as like take advantage of. So what are some of the big interfaces in Kubernetes that get used aside from SMI? Can anyone think of them? Maybe something around networking, other interfaces that we use. Peter says CRI, CSI, CNI, Mortza, CSI, CNI. We've got an ingress API. That's fair. Yep, CNI, CSI. So if these acronyms don't mean anything to you, we've got a container networking interface, what does that enable us to do, right? CRI, a container runtime interface. What does that enable us to do? Well, let's roll back time real quick and talk about why SMI is so freaking cool, right? Go back to Kube 1, 2-ish. So back then, again, I feel like I'm talking a lot about CoreOS in this episode. I think CoreOS just decommissioned their Twitter accounts. This will be my my saying goodbye to CoreOS as a Twitter account here by talking about them a lot. We were at CoreOS. We were making a runtime called Rocket. Kubernetes primarily used a runtime called Docker, right? And it became this interesting thing because you think about the kubelet for a moment. What if the kubelet had to know how to talk to Rocket, but also how to talk to Docker, but also how to talk to Containerd and, Cryo and the clear container runtime thingy and all the other stuff, right? That would be total chaos. And why would it be chaos? Because there's not a defined interface in place where the kubelet can just say, I'm going to tell you that I want to add a pod or delete a pod or check on a pod, and then you just do the stuff that needs to happen in your own implementation. There wasn't that initially. So something like the CRI came to light. Same with CNI, right? Because with CNI, we can say, add a network to the workload, delete a network from the workload. And by just being able to ask for those things, what kinds of things can we plug in? We can plug in Calico. We can plug in Cilium. We can plug in Entrea. We can plug in a bunch of different stuff. Now, SMI, I guess it's fair to say, isn't at the same level of those interfaces I just described, like CSI, CNI, CRI, but same principle where there's a group of folks setting up a specification for how we interface with these service mesh control planes. So if we could define an API for how we handle traffic metrics, how we handle traffic control, how we handle the splitting of traffic, which I'm guessing is like, percentage-based delegation and things like that, and traffic specs, which I'm not as sure about, but I'm sure we'll learn about today. If we can define those interfaces and agree on them, then we have a more aligned ecosystem where if we're plugging in Istio or plugging in Open Service Mesh or anything else, we have that flexibility in our contracts. Our interfaces don't change significantly. So pretty freaking cool, right? Steve says he's wearing his Rocket t-shirt from CoreOS. I still have my Rocket t-shirt too, Steve. I've got to get that out and show it off. I don't know where it's at. Otherwise I'd go grab it. Eric, you say you're wearing your Cabo San Lucas. Oh, okay. In memory of vacations. I get that. All right. So cool. We've talked a little bit about SMI, and now let's talk a little bit about OSM, where I'm sure we'll be interacting with some of the APIs built here. So Bridget can keep me honest here if I misspeak, but here's kind of how I think about OSM. And this is as somebody who has played with it to the extent of this episode is when we think about container runtimes, right? We've got things like Containerd and Cryo. Now, what's interesting about Cryo is that Cryo was built around the CRI spec. It's almost like, it's probably not fair to call it the reference implementation of CRI. Maybe it is. It's more than a reference implementation. Like it's a real runtime that people use all the time. But it's built natively around it, and it follows that model, and it extends features as it needs to, and so on. And OSM is one that is built around the SMI spec, which is super compelling. So, as service meshes begin to conform to SMI, I'm guessing there's going to be two models. There's probably going to be a shim-like model. Let's see here. So Istio via adapter. Okay, so I said shim. I'm guessing adapter is a pretty similar concept here, where things like Istio to conform to SMI can provide adapters or shims that basically think of them like doing some type of conversion to then respect and translate into their own APIs and so on. But OSM is built from the ground up around the SMI spec. It follows a similar data plane model to Istio in that the data plane here is Envoy. Okay, so Envoy is definitely extremely popular nowadays. I think was Envoy's conference this week. I'm pretty sure I saw some stuff on Twitter about it, right? So it's gaining a lot of steam. It's a super interesting project. We use Envoy in our ingress controller, Project Contour, right? So this is another service mesh built on Envoy, but again, with a different control plane, different implementation principles, and built completely around SMI. So as someone said in chat about it being timely, I totally agree. This is a really timely service mesh, and I'm excited to check it out. So let's see if we can deploy this thing and play around a little bit. And yeah, you said yes, it was to the conference this week, probably, right? So yeah, Envoy Conf this week. Probably saying what the name is wrong, but close enough. All right. So what's this stuff about WASM in chat? WASM. Oh, Steve, you said we should do a WASM. That'd be cool. We should do a WASM episode. Hey, I mean, Envoy supports doing stuff with WASM, right? So maybe we do something like that. All right, let's get into it here. So do I even have a cluster? I'm so less prepared today than I usually am. It's been one of those weeks where it's been like a really good week, but at the same time, like just feel like my brain is melting out of my ears at this point. It just feels like so many things have happened. Okay, I do have a cluster. Oh, I tweeted about having a cluster. What am I talking about? So this cluster's still live. That's the good news. I think we're pretty good to get things deployed here, and we will deploy into this. So let's get back to OSM and see what we got going on. So it looks like OSM has a CLI, which is pretty interesting. The simplest way of installing Open Service Mesh is using the OSM CLI. Okay, cool. So rather than bringing down a bunch of YAMLs or worrying about Helm templating and things like that, I'm guessing this will take care of that for me. So let's go ahead and grab the OSM CLI and play around with it a little bit. We'll obviously do the newest release. By the way, what's the status of OSM? Is it like in development? Is it I'm guessing it's not like something that people are using in prod just yet. Project status. OSM is under active development. Okay, not ready for production workloads. Cool. So we're bleeding edge enough in TGIK. We're not scared of that. Let's grab the AMD 64. I won't make the mistake I almost always do, which is to grab the ARM 64. It doesn't look like there's a build for ARM anyways. Okay, so let's get that CLI down here. All right, Sevi, you said, Google's donation of Istio to this new foundation, Open Usage Commons. Anyone on the chat who likes to throw some ideas on why they did that exactly? Yeah, that's a great question, Sevi. I don't know. I know that there's been like some opinions, I'll put it that way, on like the foundations and all that good stuff. I'm just not close enough to it, especially in the service mesh space. But if anyone has perspectives, talk about it. I mean, it's definitely interesting. I guess the big thing I think that OSM has going for it is it's aligning around a spec. It's driving a good community. I think that's what's given it a lot of promise here. So Steve says no comment, and I'm going to say no comment too. Yeah. It's interesting, right? So we've got it. Let's go ahead and unzip or untar the download, which was called OSM. All right, and we will move this thing over to my path. So there's OSM, user local bin, sudo. I never use the install command. I always use move. What do y'all think about that? Should I be using install? I feel like that's the thing I should be doing. Anyways, all right, so we've got the release 4.2. We'll go back to the docs here. And then I just type in OSM install, it looks like. Interesting. So let's go ahead and set ourselves up a little bit. First thing I'll do is just see what the heck the OSM thing is. Okay, OSM dashboard, interesting. Open a Grafana dashboard through SSH redirection. Okay, they've got this thing pretty freaking integrated in. So it looks like I'll be able to deploy observability stack of sorts, probably Prometheus and Grafana. It looks like I've got the install command, of course, manage the OSM installations. Interesting. Yeah, this is really cool. Yeah, it's a good use case where like something as complicated as service mesh could theoretically justify its own command line tool to handle more things than we can just do with kubectl, or frankly just to provide a really good dev experience too. So it's like your control L. Yeah, you're not wrong. I know Rory's here today. I'm gonna use control L a couple times today. I just did. Just note that is one time I've used control L. And Raman's, you said we need abstractions for CLIs. Yeah, I think we do need a CLI. What do you say? All right, so let's test this thing out. Kubectl, watch kubectl get, I don't know what namespace it's going to put things in. Does this picture show me? Get pods, get ns. Okay, come on, show me what namespace you're going in here. OSM install, that looks good. I just want to watch the namespace that it goes in because that would be super interesting. Rory says woo to control L. I'm learning. OSM system. Okay, great. So let's watch that. Get namespace OSM system, and we're gonna watch the what do y'all say? The services, the pods. Yeah, that's enough. That's good enough. We'll start there. Okay, here we go. So. Fingers crossed. This will be the easiest install that we've done on TGIK, perhaps. Let's see if this works. OSM install. Woo! Cool. Oh, Jaeger showed up. They've got tracing. They've got tracing in this thing. Look at that. Okay, so what do we got going on? We've got Jaeger. We've got, by the way, with Jaeger, we got to get back to our open telemetry episode. We need to do an episode on putting metrics in. We've got the OSM controller. Okay, so I'm guessing that's maybe the control plane, the thing that programs the Envoy proxies. We've got Prometheus. We've got, okay, cool. Now here's an interesting thing that we'll have to figure out as we dig in, is how does it work with the actual data plane injection, which I'm sure we'll get a bit into, but basically, like, just to frame this here, conceptually, and make sure we're all on the same page. What we're kind of going to do here is today we probably have, pods as we know it. And these will be pods that we deploy, okay? Or a pod right here, right? And then this pod obviously has, or maybe not obviously, this pod has a container inside of it, right? So this is our container. This could be our workload, our application, so on and so forth. And, what does the data path look like for sending packets out of this container? Well, without getting too complicated with it, it has its own little interface that it sees here that kind of goes out to the host interface, and it gets routed and so on and so forth. So keeping that very naive and high level for now, what we're really trying to do here is introduce a sidecar container, right? Which we know is going to be Envoy. So that when the container sends traffic, it can be sent to this little Envoy friend here and then routed out. And basically, like, if you think about what the crux is of most service meshes, it's basically how well we can take this little sidecar and how well we can basically make it really smart. I mean, that's really what we're doing here. How can we go in to this little friend here and make it smart so that it can figure out traffic patterns, how to get TLS certs, so on and so forth. And really what I think the problem we're gonna first look at is, how do we get this little Envoy thing here? I know in Istio it uses mutating webhooks to inject them. It's probably the same in OSM. And then also, what's the component that actually makes these OSMs smart? So I don't actually know if it's the controller. We'll find out what the heck that component is. But basically, how do we go in and actually program these and make them intelligent? Because if we just shipped Envoy next to all of our pods, that's neat, but it wouldn't do anything, right? It would just be like a transparent reverse proxy that, like, doesn't mean anything. It's all about how we get the knowledge into that little Envoy friend, right? All right. So, Bojanche, I hope I'm saying your name right. You said, I started rewriting Hot Rod and forgot about it. Very cool. If you make some progress on that, you should send the repo over. We'll take a look on TGIK at the open telemetry implementation of Hot Rod for sure. Yeah, Steve says, where there are 600 CRDs. We'll check CRDs next, because I know with Istio, there's a freaking lot of CRDs. So we'll see if it follows suit. And Steve, you're sold on Miro. I know, Miro's great. I hear you, Flesh. It's pretty CPU heavy. For what it's worth, I don't use the app. And you could do some weird stuff with C groups if you're on Linux to, like, contain that and not let it go too insane. So it stays pretty reasonable on my host, but I've heard people get a little bit weirded out by how much CPU it takes. Totally fair. Okay, so let's see, to Steve's point, let's see what the CRDs are here. So we've theoretically installed OSM, and I'm actually really curious. Sorry, my brain's all over the place. Get mutating webhook configurations. Okay. This might be answer number one. So perhaps, I don't know for sure what's doing the injection, but to keep it simple, this controller might be dual purpose. We'll find out as we learn. I'm just guessing here for fun. But perhaps this controller is both the service mesh control plane, right, in one respect, and then perhaps it's also acting as the mutating, or let's call this the Envoy injector, right? Which could basically be the mutating webhook that will probably be putting the Envoy instances into our workloads today. That's my best guess. So seems pretty sensible. Cube cuddle, and by the way, I could totally be wrong, but we'll figure it out. All right, what CRDs do we have for OSM? Well, we probably could have guessed this already, right? The CRDs we have are the SMI spec, right? So we've got something, it looks like TCP routes, we've got traffic splits, we've got traffic targets, Let me just grep for there's this back pressure one, which is that's pretty interesting. So I'll just start by grepping for the split here for SMI. There we go, close enough. So HTTP groups, TCP routes, traffic splits, traffic targets. Doesn't look too bad to me. What do y'all think? Seems pretty reasonable, but who knows? As the project grows, maybe there'll be an influx of CRDs. But this seems pretty sensible. All right, so we've got a service mesh. Let's go back to their repo, and we had messaged Michelle from Microsoft a little bit earlier before this episode, and I think she said to look at the bookstore example, or it was one of these demos. So we'll check out the manual demo and see if we can play around with this a little bit. So we've done OSM install. That seems pretty good. And then it looks like there is a bookstore, book buyer, book thief, book warehouse demo applications that we're going to apply here. So let's go ahead and grab this repo, and we will deploy this bookstore app rather than y'all seeing me fumble with Nginx for the millionth time. Okay, so we will git clone this. I'm learning my lesson. Slowly but surely. Don't put a / at the end of the URLs. All right, so we've got that. Let's go into OSM. For those of you who didn't see the episode, there was an episode where I probably spent like 60 seconds to 3 minutes figuring out like, why the heck won't it clone? And sure enough, it was the / at the end. Okay, so OSM, we're inside of that. I'm going to remove its Git repo because I might commit this later into TGIK, and we should be good. So let's go ahead and run the kubectl apply to deploy these. Okay, so this says create the bookstore application namespaces, onboard the namespaces to the OSM mesh, and enable sidecar injection on the namespaces. Okay, this is interesting. Let's start by making the namespaces because that's kind of trivial. We'll do a quick kubectl get get pods inside, get ns. We'll watch that. All right, so there's our namespaces today. We'll grab these, the lovely little shell for loop. All right, so we got a book buyer, a bookstore, a book thief, and a book warehouse. Interesting. So someone's going to be stealing books from us, I guess. Okay, so we've got those. Now this is an interesting concept. Enable sidecar injection. Oh, it's doing it through the command line. I was like, what the heck is this flag doing? Okay, so apparently there's a way to opt in to the service mesh, it looks like. And this is actually a really good thing because, perhaps you're going to be putting OSM in a cluster that doesn't have a service mesh already. You're not just going to rebuild the whole cluster and make every app contribute to the service mesh, or I should say be part of the service mesh, but you want to kind of enable certain workloads to be part of the mesh. I'm guessing this is what that's doing. We'll check it out in a second. So let's copy this. Let's do one of these. And I'll tell you what, let's grab, we're going to be doing it to the bookstore namespace. So let's grab that as an example. And let's go ahead and watch, we'll do this. Kubectl get namespace bookstore, right? Okay, bookstore, and we'll get the YAML output and we'll put it in before.yaml. That looks good. Great. Okay, now let's do this. OSM namespace add. This command line's pretty cool. Namespace, bookstore added, book buyer, good. Okay, now let's do after. Okay. And I have no idea if it did anything to the namespace YAML, but let's see. So if we did a quick diff of before and after, what do we got here? Okay, so, okay, no, oh no, it did add annotations, huh? So here we go. So it looks like inside, do I have vimdiff on this? Because if so, that would be a really lovely way to look at that. Vimdiff, no, Josh, why? Vimdiff. I switched to a desktop recently, so I have missing some packages here. But okay, so what I'm guessing is it's probably annotating. I don't know what package vimdiff is in. Okay, never mind. We're good enough. So we'll just go into after and look at it. We've got an annotation here, and this is probably what it's looking at to figure out whether it wants to inject sidecars. And we can validate that pretty easily. It looks like there's also a label put on it, monitored by OSM. So I think these are the key changes that we saw. All right. So let's go ahead and deploy the applications and see if these all get set up okay. Oh, they got a graphic, great. We'll see if these get set up. So we will get out of here. We'll clear this out. We'll do a watch for kubectl get pods in the namespace bookstore, just to have one little sanity check here. Okay, great. And then we will apply that. Well, I can't do a directory, right? Apps. Okay, what's in the apps directory? So docs. Oh, I can do a directory. What am I saying? I need to go into OSM. There we go. Okay, so let's apply one more time. There we go. All right, theoretically, we're creating a bunch of stuff. Let's see if there's a bookstore app. Good, good. All right, now you'll notice in this field, we've got two what? What are these numbers for? They're not pods, right? This pod has two, and I'm guessing one of these is probably the Envoy sidecar. So we'll do a quick kubectl get for the pods in the namespace bookstore. Okay, and let's describe actually. I was going to do a YAML output, but I think a describe would be good. All right, we'll describe that. All right, what do we got going on here? So we have got open service mesh init image. That's in a init container though. That's not an actual container that's running generally. We've got the OSM bookstore right here as one of our images. And we've got, let's see here, where's my image? Init, bookstore, Envoy Alpine, there we go. Okay, so looks like we've got a sidecar container, looks pretty good. All right, not too bad. So let's see if we can get this thing working with some of these policies. So following are the key components. We've got the deployment, the service account, the root service called bookstore, which, okay, good, good. All right, an SMI traffic split resource, which specifies how much traffic should go to each resource. Okay, we should check that out then. So if we deployed one of those, let's check it out. Kubectl get traffic split. Okay, and let's just get that for all namespaces. Okay, so we've got a bookstore split here. Let's grab that. So we'll do traffic splits inside of the namespace bookstore. Okay, and this will be a, let's see here. This will be a, we'll just do a YAML output, I guess. So YAML, and then we will vim, we'll put it into a file. So ts YAML, ts YAML. All right, good deal. So we've got a traffic split here. You know what I should do? Sorry, everyone. Let's get the specific split, bookstore split. That way I don't have that list object. All right, cool. Lovely. TS, YAML. Good, good. All right. Annotations. Let's get rid of all this stuff here. We don't really need that. Okay, so, interesting. Okay, so backends, weight is 100, service, bookstore, bookstore. So guessing this is the place that we can do the common trend of like wanting to, say it's a canary deployment of sorts, shift traffic over slightly to a different service so we can kind of see those going in different directions. But overall, the spec looks pretty straightforward. You got a service that you're pointed at, right? And then you've got the weight for that service as well. Makes sense. Okay, so we've got a traffic split. We only got one service in though, it looks like. So we'll see if it gets a little bit more advanced in a moment here. All right, so we'll set up a client port forwarding to access the services in the kube cluster. All right, so let's check that out. So scripts forward port all. New terminal session, run the following to enable in the CP env example. Okay, where is the env example coming from? I wonder. Okay, so scripts port. Okay, we'll now set up port forwarding. The port forward script will look for an env file for the env file creates the necessary. I guess what I'm confused about is what directory it's in. Let me see if I can find that real quick. So inside of here, do we have a .env? I'm guessing not. Oh no, it is there. Wow, okay. Just follow the examples, Josh. All right, so we'll do that real quick. Let's go ahead and just CP that, and let's see what's inside of env here. Okay, this is interesting. Registry password, Kubernetes namespace, book buyer. Okay, we'll see what this relates to in a moment. So we've got that. Let's do the port forward inside of scripts here. All right, cool, cool. Looks like we've got the port forwarding set up. There we go. All right. Oh, sorry, y'all. I was not scrolled down in chat. Did I miss something important here? Darn it, Josh. Let's see here. No comments. Let me just see where y'all left off. Okay, I don't think I missed anything too big yet. How can I deploy? Flesh, you asked, how can I deploy OSM with Terraform? That's a great question. I would assume that you can absolutely grab the YAML files. I'm not sure all the abstractions the OSM CLI provides for you, but I'm sure if you wanted to do this with Ansible, with Terraform, with whatever it might be, it'd be totally possible. Mortza says all hail to Arch. Yes, usually true, but today I can't find where the Vim diff package is. So, and yeah, Steve brings up a good point. Actually, you could always do it with GitOps. You could put the manifests in somewhere and use Flux or Argo to get those deployed. All right, cool. Okay, I don't think I missed anything else. Sorry about that. I somehow accidentally scrolled up in the chat. All right, so we've got some things deployed. We've got Envoy injected. Theoretically, with our SMI objects or SMI compliant objects here, we're probably giving some information to Envoy. And then I guess in this piece here, what most commonly happens is that you'll put some type of like little minimal IP tables rules in place that basically say when the traffic leaves here, go to Envoy. When traffic enters, go to Envoy. Not guaranteeing that that's how OSM does it, but it's quite likely that that's the approach. So, okay, so to view all the resources we've got, services, traffic split, bookstore. Let's look at our deployments real quick before we start testing stuff out. All right. Open up a new window here. Okay, cool. So we've got book thief, we've got bookstore, we've got book buyer. I set up a bunch of port forwarding. It looks like Jaeger's here. Controller, Prometheus. Cool. So hopefully we can do some stuff with metrics. I don't see Grafana yet, so there's probably a way for us to deploy Grafana on top, or we just got to deploy our own Grafana, one of the two. All right, view the application UIs. Okay, to override the default ports. Interesting. Okay, so these are to override the default ports. Okay, I don't think I need to do that. Hopefully these will just open up. Let's see. Hey, great, book buyer. Okay, so we've got a couple things here. We've got the book buyer. We've got bookstore v1. Okay, total book spots. So this is maybe like an aggregate total book spot. We've got books sold in bookstore v1. You can see that they're refreshing on some interval up there. I don't think I have v2 deployed yet, right? Okay. So v2 is not available at this time in the demo. Will be available during traffic split. That's good. And then book thief, which I have no idea what that is, but it seems to be working. Probably people stealing books. Okay, lovely. Let's get into this then. All right, so we want to make the book thief application access the mesh here. So we've got this idea of a traffic target. The current traffic target spec with commented book thief kind. So traffic target, the destination is looking at the bookstore, it looks like. And then traffic target for here. Interesting. We should look at what the traffic target spec is exactly. Traffic target, let's see here. Oops. Currently, the book thief application is not authorized to participate in the service mesh communication. We will uncomment out the lines in the docs to allow the book thief to communicate with bookstore, then reapply the manifest and watch the change propagate. So the current change here, and then the updated change. Okay, so we should just take a quick look at, let's see, what's our big diff here? What do y'all see? The bookstore v1 HTTP group. Do I have a traffic target? Is that what I was looking at earlier? Let's see here. Kubectl get traffic target A. No, I don't have a traffic target yet. Currently, the book thief application has not been authorized. Okay, so let's go ahead and I guess deploy this thing. So traffic target. All right, we'll try this out. So we'll go into raw, see if we can get this deployed. Okay, so traffic target.yaml. We'll throw this in. Okay, so what do we got going on here? It looks like the traffic target is telling it to take part in the mesh. So HTTP route group matches buy a book, books bought, service account. Huh, interesting. Yeah, I wonder what we got going on here. The destination. Okay, so where's the target? Okay, sources maybe. Interesting. So sources is service account book buyer. All right, and then the destination is the bookstore. So is this perhaps enabling the book buyer to reach the bookstore itself? And then perhaps the book thief not going to the bookstore is kind of the crux of this demo, I'm guessing, because we can show how we can enable and disable certain paths to happen. Let's see. We'll apply this and see if we can prove this out. Okay, cool. Let's give it a shot. So kubectl. Apply TT. Okay, we've got those two things created, which means we should now have a traffic target. Looks pretty good. Can't complain. All right, bookstore, good. All right, let's see if it gives us a... Oh, hey, check that out. So we've got books being bought, and I'm guessing that this is happening from the bookstore itself. So we've got the... Okay, I think I'm starting to get where this is going. So the book buyer is going out to the bookstore, right? That is going in and actually hitting this, and we're selling books over time. Now, before, these were refreshing, polling, however the little demo is set up, but obviously we weren't hitting anything. And effectively, what we've got here that's kind of interesting is we've got this new spec called traffic target, where we can actually define what is able to access what. Now this is kind of interesting, right? Like what levels do we do this on today in like a current Kubernetes cluster that might not have a service mesh involved? Well, a lot of times we do this kind of stuff with like network policy at a bit of a lower level, right? So why is my chat not refreshing? Let's see here. I'm seeing it refresh in OBS and it's not refreshing here. Weird. Sorry, everyone. Hold on one second. I feel like y'all are talking to me. Yeah, so strange. Okay, I guess I'll have to hit refresh on the window. Okay, let's see here. Tech is easy, people are hard. Raw YAMLs. Oh, layer 8 is always the issue. Yeah, Maddie. Cool. Okay, I've refreshed the chat window on my like box here, and I think I can see you all here. So which part does service account play here? Great question, Martha. So I think, here's what I'm thinking. I think that service account is being used as the identifier, if you will, of what service it's going to attach this to. So kind of like an identity thing. And that's basically how we're kind of looking up the correlated application itself, right? Oh, wow. Now I can see you all chatting so much. I'm so sorry it wasn't working. Yeah, I know. We need a TGIK Slack. This YouTube thing ain't cutting it anymore, huh? Discord's the new cool thing, eh? Yeah, you might be right. Okay. So yeah, I think these are, I'm guessing these are just identifiers. So any application in theory that's using the service account book buyer and then is allowed to then go to the destination of anything that's using bookstore. And then it looks like maybe these are like layer 7 type concerns. So HTTP routes, where we can allow for certain rules like path and header values and things like that. So feel free to mess with this, and you can probably get even more hyper specific, because one of the big things with a lot of CNI network policy implementations is you're not operating at that higher layer, right? So in that case, you don't have that same level of functionality and feature set. Now, some CNIs do stuff like that, like Cilium and things, but this is something we can do at the mesh level. So, and now we're in a debate about whether we should use anything from IRC to Discord. So I'll let you all figure that out, and then let's use something else. We'll blame me not being able to refresh chat on it. All right, cool, looking good. Wow, I missed so much chat. What the heck happened to my Firefox window? I'm so confused. Oh well. Okay. So, in theory, and this is me diverging from the demo, which will probably come back to bite me. But here's what I'm thinking. If we went back to the traffic policy and we edited it, and then we allowed for this service account to have traffic. Okay. I'm guessing we'll start to see the book thief come in too. So the book thief's probably going after it, but it's not getting anywhere because it doesn't have the actual traffic target that's allowing the traffic to go to and from the thing. So we'll do that with the service account book thief. We'll save that up and we'll break the flow for a second and apply it and then see if our book thief starts gaining books. Oh, and the book thief doesn't. Okay, so maybe there's more to it than just that. All right. Your Cilium count is 2 right now. What do you mean, Steve? The amount of times I've mentioned Cilium? All right. Cool. All right, so a thief still isn't... Oh, no, there's thief. There we go. I don't know what the delay was. Maybe that was just the controller programming taking some time to program the envoys. So... okay, we're learning some good stuff here. So far, it seems like we've got this acting as an injector, putting the envoy in place. Seems like we've got the controller that's actually, I should point this at the brain, shouldn't I? This is the thing that's actually going in, reading our SMI objects or our kind of traffic policy and all that stuff, and actually making things happen. All right, Oscar, you said, does the CLI include options to rotate certs, or do we need to rely on That's a great question. So I think when I was looking over the repo earlier, I think they have a couple options for certs themselves. Let's break out of the demo for a second. OSM usage patterns. So for the MTLS and cert, you have a couple different options, and it's great that they have made these pluggable. They have an internal package, first time installation. So I'm guessing this is just like a really simple, like, let's get you next 509, let's wire things up, let's make sure you can do mutual TLS without external dependencies, which is a great call. And then they have integration where we can hook into Vault, Azure Key Vault, Cert Manager, and then there's probably ways to plug in more if you wanted to build more from there. So I'm not sure about the rotation thing. That's a great question. Rotate certs. It looks like there is some feature set there. Let's check it out and see if it's in the CLI. So if we do OSM help and let's see here, OSM control plane starts, the certificate issuer is initiated, the kind of cert is in the cert manager CLI parameter. That makes sense. When it's set to Vault, OSM uses Vault, cert in 2 methods. Okay, so it satisfies 2 methods. Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's anything in the CLI. I guess you probably need to orchestrate more with your cert manager or your Vault or your Azure Key Vault. I don't know if OSM would take on the concerns of triggering the rotation for you, but maybe that makes sense. I don't really know. I'd have to think it through more. That's a great question though, Oscar. Okay, cool. So we've got traffic going through these different folks. Let's go ahead and see if I can get us back here to our demo, see if we can get some of these bits wrapped up. So we've got the buyer, we've got the book thief coming in to bookstore V1, and we know that everything is hitting V1 at this point. All right, so that's good to know that we're directing traffic that way. Allowing the book thief to access the mesh, I'm guessing that's what we just did. Yep, so we uncommented that, which enabled book thief, one step ahead of you, docs. Okay, control policy enabling permissive traffic mode when installing the control plane. OSM install, enable permissive traffic policy. Okay, this is interesting. Bypass setting up and using access control policies entirely by enabling permissive traffic mode. I think Michelle told me about this and I'm forgetting now. I want to say permissive might be like a opt-in to traffic, opt-in instead of by default not being opted in. I want to say that's what that does. We'll see if we can get more details on that as we dive in. But remember that permissive traffic policy flag that we can maybe change here. All traffic is encrypted via MTLS regardless of whether you're using the access control policies or have enabled. Okay, this is great. So theoretically, our setup here from pods, right? So if we kind of, sort of redraw the architecture here between what we have, let's keep it simple for now. Let's focus on our book buyer, right? And then we'll focus over here on our book store. All right. So if I'm understanding everything correctly here, basically we've got these two Envoy instances. They are now communicating with one another. The way that they got their certs, since I did not install Cert Manager or anything like that, is using their internal, that internal package that's doing the MTLS or the certificate provisioning. In short, this should all be happening encrypted via MTLS from Envoy to Envoy. So pretty cool. Shawshank, you said OSM configures a certificate provider to rotate certs upon expiration. Updated certificates are pushed as, oh, great. So it's handled by default. Thanks for telling us. Makes sense. And is that true for all the providers? I don't know if you know offhand, like regardless of whether I'm using Vault or Azure Key Store, it'll handle the, making sure the rotations are in place and all that good stuff. So you said, I think when doing that, every deployment has access to others through the mesh. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking permissive mode would have meant that if we had dropped book thief and book store in, they just would have started communicating because there wouldn't need to be this kind of opt-in. So, maybe what this comes down to is like, what's your philosophy on like microsegmentation, right? Should things enter the ecosystem and be completely unable to talk to other things, but then have to explicitly add things in, which is, totally valid if you're trying to do like a micro-segmented architecture. And, again, with programming Envoy and in service mesh land, we have so many more capabilities on top of that, like actual specification of the path that you're allowed to access or the HTTP method you're allowed to use and so on. Jeremy, you said, is permissive different from MTLS permissive mode in Istio? Great question. I don't know. I would guess they're similar. If anyone knows with Istio though, like what's the default behavior? Is Istio by default like no problem, you can communicate piece to piece? I know with Istio there's ways to set it up where like you don't do the whole MTLS dance and things like that. So I don't know, what exactly the defaults are there. And Shawshank and Bridget, you're saying awesome. So I think in summary, those two comments are saying that OSM does a lot of cool stuff to make sure that the cert rotations happen. And effectively, I would guess if you wanted to introduce a new certificate management solution backend, you would just need to make sure you conform to whatever interface it gives, and then it'll be able to tell it through whatever plugin, hey, we're going to do rotation. It'll give it what it needs to do, and it will trigger it, and then the provider can handle rotation under the hood, which is pretty cool. So, all right. Oh, you literally said adding more would be great. Yes, thanks for saying that. I need to read your full sentences before I talk. Flesh says Istio is default permissive. Okay, good to know. So by default, it's open, and you'd have to intervene beyond that. And you said... Aristas, does OSM have the same issue as Linkerd when you have a reverse proxy injected in the service mesh and you can't forward the real source IP unless you skip the proxy for that? That's a great question. If anyone from the OSM group knows offhand, I would think you would be able to keep the source IP. Perhaps, I don't know. I'm not an Envoy expert though. Cool. All right, let's dig a little bit more in. So we've got these updating. They look pretty good. Let's see in our little demo here. It's a great demo, by the way. Configure traffic split between the two services. Okay, great. So now, be it book buyer or book thief, I'm guessing we want to be able to introduce a V2, very common scenario, and we want to do something where we can actually go in and probably provide a certain percentage of traffic onto the onto that V2 service. So let's go ahead and get V2 set up. I kind of want to do it piecemeal though. Maybe I won't do the traffic split just yet. Oh no, it will have us update the traffic split. Okay, good. So let's go ahead and apply this. Okay, so we've got OSM, kubectl, apply. All right, Josh, what'd you do? There's no examples directory. What was I applying in before? Apply. Oh, what the heck? Did I write kubectl apply and then copy kubectl apply? I think I did. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so we've got traffic target configured. That looks good. We've got service account, service, deployment. All that looks good as well. So I'm guessing traffic target is just allowing things to hit V2. But the question is, what exactly is the traffic split by default? So I think we knew this because we saw it before, right? If we do a kubectl get traffic split for the namespace bookstore, right? Okay, this is what we were looking at before. I just wanted to make sure. So traffic split YAML. And like we said, this is the back end where the weight is currently 100. So I'm guessing we can kind of ramp this up over time. Okay, looks pretty good. So if there wasn't a traffic split in place, but there was a, I'm still learning these API names, bear with me, but there were traffic targets, would it just split it 50-50? Is that kind of like the default behavior? I'm guessing so. I don't know. Okay, so good. So we've got traffic split, update the traffic split. So this is the manifest for traffic split. We'll check that out. Okay. Cool. Okay. Let's see what y'all are saying here. SD is default permissive. Does OSM YMO said, where can you watch for who is connecting to who in Envoy? Is there a central location that's published? Yeah, good question. I'm curious what information that we grab out of Envoy. Like I know in Contour, we pull some of the data out of the Envoy API and expose it. I'm sure OSM probably leverages some of that data as well. Make sure you go to Bookstore V2 before you update the split. Good point, Phil. Let's try that out. So we've got kubectl. We've got the pods for the Bookstore V2. So let's check that out. Now, is there logs for Bookstore? I hope there is, because that would be kind of cool if we could kubectl logs Bookstore pod. It's going to yell at me because I'm going to need to choose the container, but that should be about it. So namespace bookstore. Okay, and then we'll do bookstore. Okay, so this is the one that's probably not taking any traffic. Let's see real quick here. And who knows if it's actually logging anything. I'll know pretty soon. Logs. Okay, and then we'll do this. And check out Bookstore V1. Lovely. Oh, hey, something's happening. Okay, that's good. So we've got about 50-50. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Steve. We've got so much observability. I've got a freaking UI in the demo. I've got a lot of stuff. And hey, Phil, did you give, I might be getting you confused, but did you give a talk on on OSM to the Kubernetes meetup in Colorado by chance? I feel like your name looks familiar and I might have seen that presentation if that was you. I can't remember though. And if it's not you, I'm getting you confused. Okay, so this is going through. We've also got the UI, which I've got up here. So to your point about V2, exactly, let's pull up the UI. Oh, it was you. Awesome. Great presentation. I'm probably reiterating a lot of what you showed, but yeah, it was really cool to get an idea of that. It's what got me so stoked to do an episode on this. So Bookstore V2, what's our port for Bookstore V2? What's our port? It's set it up here, right? It is, there it is, 8082. I should have guessed. Okay, so we've got 8082 here. Okay. Oh, you know what? I did the port forwarding command and I doubt it worked because why would it work if the pod wasn't there, right? So let's see if I have to run that again by chance. So if I go back to OSM and we do this thing again, I guess. Let's see if I get lucky. So here, OSM, we'll do that. Okay. A lot of them are already in use. That makes sense. But hey, look at it. Okay, cool. So I still don't know if I figured out what would happen if a traffic split wasn't there yet, but we know a traffic split is there. We know it's giving 100% to Bookstore V1. So let's go ahead and up it to having Bookstore V2 as well. So we'll go back here. Oh, these logs are my client, aren't they? Okay. Not as interesting. All right. Well, at least we got the UI. So we'll go back to OSM and we'll go back to the update for the policy for traffic split. That's this here. You know what? We should look inside of this real quick just to see what the change is. So we will go ahead and vim into, we'll CD into OSM. We will vim into here, into traffic split, and okay, cool. Hey, here's a question for the OSM team, because we did an episode on Flagger, which was pretty interesting for like slowly dialing up the traffic based on conditions and things like that. Does OSM plug into Flagger by chance, or is that something you all are thinking about? I'm just curious. So, all right, this looks like it's going to completely shift us from V1 to V2. So let's see if we can do that. So this will not be a canary deployment. This will be, I guess, more like a blue-green, right? We will do kubectl apply. Kubectl apply. Phil says, you're working on a Flagger integration. Sick. Yeah, that'll be really cool. What did you do, Josh? Okay, so you vimmed it a second ago. Oh, that's why. Okay. Kubectl apply traffic split. And do we lose all the traffic coming into one? Okay, it's still going up. Still going up. Still going up. Do. Okay. Come on, Bookstore V2, you got this. Oh, Bridget said the Flagger team is active in the SMI community. I think I saw Flagger on the SMI thing. I mean, SMI is such a win for Flagger, because if they can focus on a unified API that we all agree on, they don't have to worry about implementing it for Contour and for the 90 other thousand options of how you would balance, ingress traffic or service mesh traffic. So I'm glad to hear that they're involved, because this seems like a huge, huge benefit for them, providing a consistent API. Okay. Hey, looks like we got it. And 54, 57, 60, it is going up. And then I would imagine, probably goes without saying, but let's do it anyways. If we came into the traffic split here, and we just set it to, oh heck, let's be, actually, no, I've got it right here. We're good. I'll just edit it, and then we'll bring this up to a 50-50 split. Okay, and then apply just like that. And I would guess in a moment that we should have these two going and firing off. It'll probably just take a second. So, all right, what else are y'all talking about here? Does ISM use Spiffy? Let's see here. That's from Martin. Let's see. I'm seeing if anyone answered you, Martin. Martin Spiffy's about service identity, so I guess at the Envoy level itself. Yeah, that's a great question. Like, as far as identity providers go, so we've obviously got mutual TLS, and we can hook into Vault and all those different kinds of things. And I guess in a way we can get some amount of identity done that way. I don't know if OSM has plans to look at like projects that align with Spiffy, like what's the reference implementation called? Is it Spire? Things like that to integrate with from an identity provider standpoint. I guess Console Connect's probably a massive identity provider too, right? Steve says, shout out Stefan. Yeah, Stefan from Flagger. He joined us and gave us some good insight as we were playing around too. Bookstore V1, Bookstore V2. Yeah, looks like they're both incrementing now. Pretty cool. Pretty sweet API. And yeah, I mean, this is great news for the service mesh community and things like Flagger. It's so simple. If the API stays consistent, it just speaks to the value add of having this SMI spec. And Phil says, yep, they're looking into Spiffy integration for identity. So Martin, it looks like maybe not today, but looking to plug that in. I think what I like so much about this is it's so simple. it's doing like the 90% case, and it's doing it really well in a really clean way, which is neat. I guess the one thing I'd love to wrap up on, if we could figure it out, I don't know if it's part of the demo, is a little bit on the observability stack. I wonder how hard it would be to look at that Jaeger output and stuff like that. Let's see if we can, oh, I'm on the SMI spec page. So, okay, inspect, oh, okay, it's on, no, it's part of the demo, I lied. OSM ships with pre-configured Grafana dashboards, great. I didn't see Grafana though. Did y'all see Grafana? I thought we just had Prometheus. So, kubectl, get pods. Let's bring this down. Am I losing my mind? We've got Jaeger. We've got Prometheus, OSM Prometheus, interesting, okay. Huh. And Choco, you said, what do you all mean by identity? And that's a great question. I think sometimes we get identity in, workload to workload encryption and mutual TLS a little bit, I don't want to say confused because they're overlapping concerns in a way. But by identity, we basically just mean providing the mechanism to prove the authenticity of the thing, if that makes sense. So think of it like authn, when you think about authn and authz. So if I go in, is there some means where I can tell you like, I am Josh, like I swear I'm Josh, I'm not Choco, I am Josh, and like here's how I can identify myself in a way that Choco cannot impersonate, right? Now that's, as you can imagine, a bit of a different concern than whether Choco and Josh are talking to each other over a fully encrypted, protocol or through a protocol that offers some level of encryption, right? So with identity, and a lot of times how some of these models can work and why sometimes they get, kind of thought together is when you go out, you can provide certificates to individual people and that can act as their identity, right? Because theoretically they only have that private key. And then using those certificates, they can then facilitate encrypted communication to and from. So what we're talking about with identity is, calling out that it's a little bit different than encryption, but a lot of times when you establish identity, those mechanisms enable you to encrypt traffic as well, if that kind of makes some sense. So that's kind of how I think about it. They're a bit different concerns, but they totally play in the same ballpark. And more so, you said maybe they run Grafana locally. You might be right. Oh, Richard, it looks like you have to install OSM with enable Grafana. Let's try OSM dashboard, and if it doesn't work, we'll do exactly what you said. So if you still have the terminal running, scripts port forward, okay, I've done that twice now. I think we're fine. Oh, terminate port forwarding. It will not work. Okay, good. Okay, let's go ahead and terminate that. I think we're gonna lose the connection to our apps, but that's okay. I can do weird stuff manually if I need to. So we'll kill port forwarding. Oh, it was running. Yeah, duh. Okay, kill it twice. And then let's do OSM dashboard and see if this works for us. And then navigate to localhost 3000. Okay. Starting the dashboard, failed to start. OSM Grafana is not. See, Richard, I think you may have just saved us a bunch of time. So you said I need to do OSM install, and let's do a quick help. I think you said it was enable Grafana, right? Enable Grafana. All right, how idempotent is the OSM install command? Can I do OSM install enable Grafana like that? Ah, darn it. Can I add Grafana? Help. Can I add Grafana? Okay, feature request. I'd love to be able to add Grafana if there's not an easy way to do that already. You need to add the mesh name. I think what it was saying though, Steve, is I think it was telling me you need to put in a new mesh name because you already installed. See what I mean? Mesh OSM already exists. You specify a new mesh name using -- mesh name. Does that work? Mesh name OSM? Whatever. Might as well try. Mesh name OSM. OSM already exists. Okay, that's what I would have expected. No big deal. Here's what we're gonna do. Let's learn if OSM is easy to remove real quick. So OSM help, and we'll wrap up today on just dropping the bookstore in one more time. We'll see if we can open up Grafana and see if we can test some of this out. So OSM, oh, check this out though. OSM mesh list. Oh no, I'm not that lucky, I don't think. I was hoping that I would be able to add it from here maybe, but maybe not. Okay, so OSM help. Can I easily delete OSM or uninstall OSM? Huh, interesting. Doesn't look like it. Should I install 2 OSMs to the same cluster? You think that'll work? It might be faster. I guess this speaks to the benefit of like having a really good GitOps flow in place or something. Like as cool as the command line tool is, it's pretty nice to have like, you know, those types of abstractions kind of can fall apart in some of these use cases. Okay, so it said, oh, did it say mesh uninstall? Mesh, you are right. Good catch. Uninstall. Y'all probably wanted to see me put 2 meshes in though, because that'd be pretty interesting, huh? Okay, what did I call it? OSM? Accepts 0 arguments, received 1. Okay. Oh, because the name is a flag, right? That's probably what it is. All right, here we go. Let's see if uninstall works. So we will do a watch, kubectl, get pods, and all the namespaces. Are we terminating? Great. We terminated the mesh, and the bookstore is still there, so that might work out. Okay, what else we got here? So if we do this one more time and do OSM install, what can we install, by the way? So we can deploy Jaeger. That was funny because Jaeger got it deployed, right? Oh, default says true. Gotta learn to read. Enable debug server, enable egress in the mesh. Interesting. Enable Grafana. Okay, I think we had... no, we didn't have Grafana. I was thinking Prometheus. Permissive traffic policy. We learned about that a bit. Enable Prometheus. That's true by... Okay, let's just turn on... let's just turn it on. So, enable all the flags. Yes. Well, if there was an enable all command, Chaco, I'd probably do that. But I'm just going to do enable Grafana because I don't want to type all those things out. OSM install, enable Grafana. Let's see if this installs. Okay. That should be good. So, you know, what's funny is when it uninstalled OSM, did it uninstall the CRDs? I wonder. Because if so, then my traffic policy is going to be screwed up, right? Especially now that I'm not in permissive mode. Let's see. So kubectl get traffic split. It's still there. Okay. So uninstalling it doesn't remove the CRDs, it doesn't look like, which is good. Yeah, I agree, Steve. I think the crux, I mean, you know, realistically though, like this is a great tool for getting things bootstrapped, like over time and, you know, more, how should I say it, more production-oriented deployments, you're probably going to manage this a different way than some CLI. But nonetheless, I hear you. It would be kind of a cool user experience to add them in, right? Okay. So, cool. And let's see, I guess if we have Grafana, right? What did I miss a step? I don't think so. We're not port forwarding, OSM dashboard, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see if it works. OSM dashboard. Hey. Oh boy, what's the default password? Is it admin with Grafana? I always forget. I'm logged in. New password. Okay, good. Hey, look at that, first guess. Okay, I'll put in my new password. Hey, guess what my new password is? It's admin. Okay, admin. And we're in Grafana. So we've got the dashboards. We'll go to home real quick. And then, I haven't been in Grafana in a while. Let me turn off this dark mode thing. Okay. OSM control plane, OSM data plane. Interesting. Control plane metrics. What do we got here? Success count, failure count, connections, control plane. Looks good. Hackerman, admin. Yep, you're not wrong. Okay, so control plane looks pretty simple. This is just when I guess I add an API object maybe. We're probably way more interested in the data plane. Pod to services metric, service to service metric, workload. Oh, the distinction here is interesting, right? Pod to service metrics, service to service metrics. So the use of service here is interesting. Does pod to service mean a workload that's not taking part in the mesh calling a workload that is taking part in the mesh? I'm curious what the distinction is there. Service to service. Okay. All right, service to service has nothing yet. no data yet. Do any of these have data yet? So data plane, pod to service. Okay, nothing yet. All right, I guess I should be checking if my bookstores are working, right? Oh, select a namespace. Good call. I'd be here for hours. All right, so let's start with where the heck is my namespace selector at? Geez. Okay, so home, dashboards, and service. It's going to be in here, right? And then source namespace. None. What do you mean none? Bookstore? Does that work? Is dark mode screwing me up again here? Uh-oh. I think you have to generate data again. It may have nuked your stuff. You need to redeploy. What do I need to redeploy? The book app? Is that what y'all are saying? I need to redeploy the book stack or whatever? Let's see. So I thought it was polling constantly, but I might be wrong. Let's see if we can figure this out real quick. So kubectl, get pod, namespace, bookstore. Oops, bookstore here. The pod's still running, right? But I think what y'all are saying is I might need to redeploy these. Kubectl, get. Oh wait, I'm in non. Ooh, you know what we should have checked? Traffic target, right? Traffic targets all. No, they're there. The traffic targets are there. Interesting. I wonder why it wouldn't be polling. Kubectl, get namespaces. So we've got book buyer, we've got bookstore, we've got book thief. I think you're probably right. It's probably not generating data. Let's do this real quick. Let's go back and do the port forward command, even though it might screw with. You need to put requests through the proxies, but I thought the app was doing that by default. Let's see. So here's how. Oh, could the annotations be different for the new deployment? Good question. We should check that because, right, one thing we learned is that it does annotate the namespace, although I thought that was just for the sidecar injector. Let's see. So kubectl, get namespace, bookstore, YAML, and I'm sure we still got it annotated, right? Oh, we don't. Oh wait, no, yeah, we do. Okay, so open service mesh, sidecar enabled, monitored by OSM. Okay, here, let's do this real quick. This will tell us the answer without running in too many circles. So if I just go back to the proxy command and do that now. Okay, so let's just reproxy and it might get upset with me. Wait, not what I wanted to do. Where was the proxy command? There it is, scripts proxy all. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll cd into OSM, I'll run this. All right, we got the proxies back up. If these aren't receiving traffic, that will make a lot of sense. They're receiving traffic though, look at that. So bookstore v2 is receiving traffic, bookstore v1 is receiving traffic. I gotta be doing something silly with Grafana, right? And what's interesting too, if y'all look at this, like it doesn't even know my namespaces. See, it's like not really aware of anything. I wonder if there's some disconnect with Prometheus and stuff. So should you run the web page to generate traffic? Well, that's what I checked. It's clearly collecting. It's clearly sending requests, right? Steve said, "Is Prometheus there?" Good question. Let's check. Kubectl, get pods, all, and we'll be lazy. Prometheus. There it is. It's running. OSM system, OSM Prometheus. Good point about the data sources, Jeremy. Let's check that out. Data sources. Okay, so where is, so I need to make sure that it's hooked into Prometheus, right? So here it is, OSM Prometheus, server default, blah, blah, blah. Huh. It seems okay, right? I don't think there's anything, unless Prometheus is blocked by not having, is Prometheus taking part of the service mesh, and because it's not in permissive mode, Grafana can't contact it? Do you think there's any way that's it? 7070. It was pointed to 7070, right? Save and test. Good point. Data source is updated. Data source is working. Okay, good news. So that's a very easy way to validate it. So we can talk to Prometheus, it seems, right? Would Prometheus not be scraping successfully? I'm wondering if like there's any chance that like because we're in the mesh land right now, we're not actually able to scrape the metrics successfully. Richard, you know the answer. Let's hear it. What is the answer? Go to the observability docs. Okay. It's documented. Read the docs, Josh. Read the docs. Observability docs. You need to enable metrics. See, that's what I was thinking. Like, if we're in mesh land, we probably got to enable this stuff. Where is it at? List of prereqs, configuration. Oh, is it an RBAC problem? If desired, use Prometheus service definition to scrape itself. Keep scrolling further down. Metric scraping. Oh, hey, look at it. There we go. Good, because I wasn't really looking forward to figuring out the RBAC and stuff right now. It's too late on Friday to figure all that out. Let's use the command line tool. So I guess we'll just enable scraping on all these, right? OSM metrics enable. All right, let's see if this works. So this would explain why we weren't getting data. I mean, it kind of logically makes sense. Okay, so this, geez, Josh, too big. Do that. Let's kubectl, get namespaces. Great. All right, so we will do this, and we will do the book buyer, the book store, the book thief, the book warehouse. All right, I misspelled book thief, of course. I before E, come on. I before E except after C. Book thief. Book thief. Okay. We're getting close, I think. Fingers crossed. Jeremy said enable all the flags. You're not wrong. Enable all the flags. We should have known. I guess the one thing we should put a little pull request in for, or it's somewhere in this guide and I just didn't realize it, we should put a PR into the book service demo that you probably need to be aware of turning on the metrics, and you probably need to be aware of turning on the enable Grafana if you want that to work, right? I think so, at least. Unless it was in here and I just missed it. But that could be a cool PR if anyone wants to throw one in real quick. Or an issue if you don't have time to do the PR itself. OSM install. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, did I get warehouse wrong too? Of course. I'm glad you all are paying attention. What did I do? Oh, I didn't include it at all? What the heck? Okay. Warehouse. Book warehouse. Seems good, yeah? Okay. All right. Is that all we needed? Fingers crossed. I'm guessing that this maybe set up RBAC and then maybe put the annotations or labels, however it works in Prometheus, to do the automatic scrape discovery. That's my best guess. So home, we will do, I guess, what am I doing? I don't really have anything at home, but let's do service to service. Oh, hey, we have namespaces now. That's kind of good. Hey, check it out. We have metrics. Pretty cool. So here's what we should do to round it all out today. We will change the traffic shifting or traffic, what is it called? Traffic splitting, is that the API? We'll tune it up to 50-50 and see if we see, or sorry, if it's at 50-50, we'll change it to a different percentage and hopefully we'll see the metrics flow accordingly. But pretty cool. So I'm looking at book buyer right now. Does book store show me anything? I guess it doesn't look like it, right? V1, V2. So maybe there's no metrics coming off of receiving requests, but maybe they're coming off of sending requests. So I would think, okay, here we go. So book thief is sending requests, about 1 request a minute, it looks like. And let's see if this number is pretty close. So about 1 request. Wait, what is even my X and Y axis? Time per minute. Success count. We're doing more than 1 a minute though, right? Unless it's sending batches in. Request latency. Okay, well anyways, we'll just arbitrarily say that this is 1. And then we'll go to book buyer and say, okay, cool, we're pretty close. So 1 and 1. Let's change the traffic split now and see if we notice the difference, okay? So, oh wait, duh. I should be looking at V1 and V2 targets, right? So V1 is here. V2 is 1 roughly as well. Okay, so if our metrics are correct, we're probably still at 50-50. Let's go back to the terminal and see if we can wrap up on this real quick. So we will go into OSM and we will edit the traffic split YAML. Let's make it a little bit more reasonable perhaps. Okay, wow, there's a bunch of junk. Okay, I'm gonna do something really bad, don't tell anyone. Kubectl edit, traffic split for the namespace. Book, it would be in bookstore, right? Because that's what we control it, bookstore. There it is. Okay, again, don't tell anyone I did this. So we've got 50-50, looks pretty good. Yeah, it wouldn't be an episode without edit, Steve. Okay, weight is 50, weight is 50. So if we do 80-20, right? So we'll say things aren't going as well as we'd expected with V2. We want to roll back to be 80-20 on V1, and the hope is that we'll see these numbers drop in a way that kind of represents that change. So here we go. Boom. Now this could take some time because you might remember last time we noticed that the controller took a little while to update here. So. And Richard, you said, yeah, it's just an annotation. So are you saying for the CLI metric thing we did, it just injected an annotation basically? Was that the big thing we were missing? Okay, almost there. We'll see if we notice any. Okay, perfect. Well, good catch reading the docs. I wouldn't have seen that if you hadn't looked in there. So I'm glad you found it. All right, bookstore V2. I think it's slowing down now. Seems like it. Or maybe my brain just wants to tell me it is. Let's see, bookstore V1, are you going faster? Okay, bookstore V1's definitely going faster, it would appear, right? So let's go to Grafana. And then this could have a delay in and of. Oh, hey, it is going up, actually. It's just a small amount, it looks like. Oh, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Success count. V2, we should see there's V2's drop. Okay, cool. So V2 is taken a bit of a nosedive as we've done the split here, and we can see the success count. I mean, this is beautiful, right? Like, this just speaks to the power of these kind of models. Like, think about before all this kind of stuff. What were we doing? We were deploying a replica and putting a service, or a replica set and putting a service in front of it. And then we would just like bounce up the potential replicas behind the scenes, and like we were limited to round robin, and it just like, it really wasn't elegant. This is elegant. This is really cool, right? And with things like Flagger, we can dive in and we can say, oh, I'm slowly rolling out the canary, and over time, based on the amount of success I'm reading from metrics like this, I want to tune up and tune up and tune up the traffic that's going. And this is awesome. We're seeing the dashboard. We're seeing the failure counts. We can make an assessment of like, oh boy, we're starting to see spikes in failure counts with V2. Dial it back with that traffic split API. It gives us, and here's our jump for V1, right? It gives us so much opportunity to kind of see what is going on here. So overall, pretty cool. Change last hour to good point. Why? That's a great point. So let's do 5 minutes. How's that sound? There we go. That's the kind of graph we're looking for. Okay, so success count over the last 5 minutes. You can see where our bump happened right here. And if we go back to V2, there's our big dip. Seeing latencies on the P90 and P50 and the P99, of course. All really, really cool. So yeah, this is pretty freaking awesome. I think this is maybe a good place to end it, honestly, if y'all feel good about that. I mean, in an hour and a half without even touching the repo before, and genuinely, like, I opened the repo to read about it a little bit and reached out to Michelle to get some information on OSM, but we deployed a mesh. We've seen some of the power. I think what's, just kind of amazing thing to be excited about is how freaking cool SMI is and how it enables us to do these kind of things and plug the right bits in. We saw Envoy injections. We got to screw around with the permissive models, learn a bit about the pluggable backends they have for the certificate bits, and that they're working with thinking about plugging into Spiffy and all that good stuff. So yeah, this is really cool. And thanks so much from those who joined from the OSM team. We had Bridget and Phil and one more. I'm trying to scroll up to find your name. I don't want to forget you. Shoot the name in there, Bridget or Phil, if you're still on, for who I might have forgotten. But thanks so much for joining us from the OSM team and giving insight as well. It was super cool to have you all here. And yeah, I mean, I know it's still early days for OSM, but can't wait to see how you all continue building this up and continue building a really good community around service mesh as well. This is really exciting stuff. It's kind of like a bit of a next frontier for us in the cloud native space, right? So Shawshank as well, yes. And I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. Thanks so much for joining us today as well. We appreciate you all giving your insight and all that good stuff. So have an awesome weekend, everyone. We'll be back hopefully next week with some cool topic. Bring Joe or, Paul in or Cora in, someone in to do another episode on something good. And again, just to reiterate, this was an episode that was submitted inside of our Slack, our GitHub issue tracker by Mona. So if you have ideas for episodes, please feel free to submit them in GitHub. We'd love to take them. And that's about it. So until next time, everyone, have an awesome weekend, and we'll catch you hopefully next Friday. Later, y'all. See ya.